father, I'm a husband, and I want my daughter to know that she can grow up and that her life is going to be valuable just like everybody else that she grew up with.
We gotta work harder, smarter, harder. We gotta work harder, smarter, harder. Do this for the mamas, fathers, daughters, and the sons. In Sandy Springs, a black man has never won. When it's all said and done, Carter gon' get it done. He might be running from mad, but he ain't never run from the problems in the world we tryna overcome. They raising the taxes for lower tax brackets. How that make sense, man?
What's up? What's up, everybody? Man, I just wanted to take a few minutes here during my lunch break and address something that just popped up, and it involves that major fentanyl bust here in the city of Sandy Springs, right? And we're gonna go ahead and just roll in it, right? Because there's a lot that I want to say on this, and I think it's important that when we have these conversations, that we're having them in context. And so I'm gonna go ahead and let's see. No, that's not the one. All right, let me see. Pull this out real quick. But I'm about to share the screen right now. And again, it's just important that we start having these conversations in context, right? All right, let's go ahead. Oh, let's do Windows. Boom. And so y'all will see here the article that we have up, right? From WSBTV.com. And I'm going to start off and just going to read through it real quick because again, I got a lot to say, but I want to make sure that we all have context here. So let me pull this up here. And it says Georgia law enforcement makes biggest fentanyl bust in state history, enough to kill 2.5 million people. It says it's being called the largest fentanyl bust in state history. Enough suspected fentanyl to kill 2.5 million people is now off the streets of Metro Atlanta. Major Forrest Bohannon with the Sandy Springs Police Department said an anonymous tip from another department led Sandy Springs Police to an apartment where they found a contraption for packing powder into bricks, and then to a car and a stunning discovery. We seized 5 kilograms of powdered fentanyl, said the agent. They also called in the help of the DEA. Chung told the Channel 2 investigative reporter Mark Winnie that is enough fentanyl to kill 2.5 million people. It was shocking when we found the amount of fentanyl in our city. You can compare it to killing an entire population of the city of Sandy Springs. Bohannon said, we found 2 weapons in this apartment complex and we found the fentanyl pills. There are children and adults and several innocent people that live in that area. In 2 suitcases, we found approximately 240,000 pills, which we believe to contain fentanyl. And it goes on to talk about who they believe brought it in. Um, I think, you know, I've had this conversation. I've had it with a lot of people around the city, and a lot of people ask why I'm so involved in the schools, why I do so much work with the young boys in this community in Sandy Springs. And first thing they say is, "Oh man, Sandy Springs ain't got no hoods up there. Ain't no hoods in Sandy Springs. You playing, Dante? That's all rich folks. All rich folks." I want to be able to make this clear. There are only 2 wealthy districts in the city of Sandy Springs. We've got 6 total. There are only 2, right? No city can survive without a working class, which is why Buckhead isn't a city. All the rich people they have there, and it's still not enough money, right, for them to sustain their own city. So you have to think about when Sandy Springs formed back in 2006, right? What all they had to bring in order to not just build a city outside of Atlanta, but a city that could financially sustain itself. What are the 2 drivers of revenue? Income tax from the people that work in your city, and what? Sales tax. And then you throw in money that comes in from fines from ordinances, property taxes. But those are the 2 biggest revenue streams. I talked a lot about this because a lot of people don't see the direct connect. What we're seeing in Sandy Springs right now is predatory development. All these older buildings are being torn down, which have been homes to a lot of our working class families. And I don't even know why we keep saying working class, right? When I grew up, we just said poor folks. That's because I grew up in that environment. I know what it is, right? It's the folks who run our supermarkets, it's our waiters, our waitresses, and it's these folks have been devalued in our community for a long time. And so it's devalued to the point where we got one elementary school, Ice and Springs, which is 100% economically disadvantaged. And let me break this stuff down because see, I'm gonna read this for y'all. Does economically disadvantaged mean, right? So you go here, economically disadvantaged refers to individuals or families with limited financial resources, often living below the poverty line. If you are living below the poverty line, right, where are you living? Where are you living? If you are, and I probably should have switched over to this screen here so I could show y'all what exactly I just read. Um, let me pull this out real quick. Pull this one out so I can switch over so everybody can see it. So, y'all, I'm just getting used to this being live and talking and stuff. So bear with me. But here it goes, right? Economically disadvantaged refers to individuals or families with limited financial resources, often living below the poverty line and potentially facing challenges in accessing basic necessities and opportunities. Um, I brought that up because we got to have a real conversation. Like, you just don't get this much fentanyl in a city where you know it's been seen as affluent, right? And these things are happening because times are tough and people are struggling, right? And the point that I'm going back to about our schools is Ice Springs is 100% economically disadvantaged, right? The school that my daughter attends, Dunwoody Springs, is 87% economically disadvantaged. So these are schools where families are struggling. And as you see here, it's often living below the poverty line. I don't know who's been in those spaces, but when you are below the poverty line, things are tough. Sometimes you're homeless. It's a variety of things, right? And so even when I talk about the homeless student population number, I took the numbers, did the math. I came up to 30%. Some folks within the district said, Dante, you're wrong. It's only 10%. But people who don't want to be identified with true knowledge of those numbers said, no, Dante, you about right. Those numbers are wrong because the numbers at my school are higher than what's on that paper. And so I don't want to get all into this, that, and the third, right? But the reality is we got real problems here, and we have ineffective, failed leadership still in place. When I worked at the Fulton County DA's office, yes, the Fulton County DA's office, and I'm probably gonna take a whole lot of heat for even bringing this up because people just look at me as just an activist. I went outside and I started marching because I saw the law was being broken, and I saw we didn't have people in place who were trying to uphold it. When people like me go outside, there's a problem. I don't need to see Donald Trump as president to understand what the problems in my community looks like. He didn't just become president, right? All of this was built up and it started within our communities. It started with people feeling unseen, unheard, and not valued. And for me, this is why it's so important to make sure that we're having a real discussion about what our community truly looks like. I would love to pretend that Sandy Springs was roses, lollipops, and big mansions. But that's the facade that was created to keep a certain group of people in power, right? We're talking about less than 5% of the city's population. Well, it's probably a little higher than that. I might be over exaggerating on that point. But the point that I'm trying to make is the overwhelming majority of the people in Sandy Springs are working families, working people who are struggling, right? And we're not talking about those issues, right? We're talking about spending millions to expand City Hall when you clearly have a drug problem in your community. And this happened. Listen, they wanted to paint me as the defund the police mayor, y'all, right? That's what they wanted to paint me as, our candidate for mayor last time, right? Listen, y'all, what I learned from working in the Fulton County DA's office is that if you are not talking to the community, and I'm a guy that sat on the Fulton County DA's opioids task force, right? I was in all the meetings. I was going up everywhere from South Fulton all the way up to Milton and Johns Creek, sitting in these meetings where folks are like, well, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about this? We had to bring in the doctors. We had to bring in therapists. We had to bring in so many different people from around our community to even start unpacking this. And what I'm saying is, in this community, the people who need to be at the table aren't there. And that's a byproduct of leadership, failed leadership. And so we got to start having honest conversations and honest discussions about what's going on within our community. And we are not. And for me, with all honesty, y'all, and I'm bringing this article back up. That's my frustration with all of it. It's not that I want to run around here and be the guy that wants to burn down a system or anything. You've never heard me say those things. What you've heard me say is we have a problem and we need to fix it. And right now we're not fixing it. We keep putting band-aids over things. And what I know, y'all, what I know, right? Life where I am now is not a great depiction of where I started. So there are things that I understand because of my life experience. What I understand is you can't ignore kids who are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old for 10 years, say we're going to build a police training center and think that those problems just disappear. Police don't stop crime. They don't. That's the fact. They don't stop crime. Now, do they go out and make sure the people who break it are accountable? Yes, they do. But if we're talking about stopping crime, right? If we're talking about lowering crime, that starts with doing the hard work. That starts with ensuring that you're building a multicultural coalition of leaders from various communities that come to the table and work on the hard things. We're not doing that, which is clear, right? We're not doing that because if we were, we wouldn't have had 2.5 million. What is this? Well, not the million pounds. I'm sorry. That's how many people it was expected to kill. But those 240,000 pills would have never been in our community, right? Because the leaders on the front would have said, hey, that's not happening here. That's not coming into this city. But it's here because people felt unseen, they felt unheard, and they felt devalued, which is reflected in the fact that people aren't voting. They don't see themselves reflected in this city. We should be building more parks, giving kids a place to go to, rec centers, giving places for our kids to go to, right? We should be creating environments to where people like Dante, who have a heart for the community, who love the community, can step up, right? We're not building that. We're not. But we want to tell you about this other Fortune 500 company that's coming into our communities and doesn't have to pay taxes, right? For 3 years. And guess what? A majority of the people that work there can't even afford to live in our city. So where's the benefit? And I think for me, that's where I get so frustrated because there's no benefit to any of this. If you're going to give that company a tax cut, where do we make up for these things, right? Are people living in our community? Are they spending money in our community? Are they buying gas in our community? All right, most of the people come in here and they're back on 400 or they're back on 285. I mean, yeah, they might eat lunch here, but again, we're not building community, which is why nobody knows what Sandy Springs truly looks like, right? There's this imaginary depiction of it. But look at the nonprofits in this city. That Look at the nonprofits in this city. They wouldn't exist if the elected leadership were doing their jobs, and they're not. They're not. I don't have to tell you who the nonprofits are. Google them. You'll see them. There's a reason why, me and a bunch of community leaders were able to start, the Juneteenth Federation and got an award for it, for the work we're doing in the community. Why? Because it's a whole. It's a whole of where needs aren't being met, where we had to come in and fill those needs, right? And so we have to have a conversation about the community we're building because people want to say, well, we can't do this because of capitalism. We can't do that, as though humanity is not on the other side of this equation. And listen, I come from a household where my mom struggled to provide, right? I remember at times as a child being selfish in life. Well, why are you bringing so and so home when you can barely afford to feed us? But he was a homeless kid, right? And to my mother's credit, she understood that you either put hope in his heart, right? Or the hurt takes over. And when the hurt takes over, it plagues our entire community. And I don't know if folks fully understand that the government's responsibility is to protect and provide. We should not be bragging about money left over in a budget, because that means the money that the taxpayers gave you to protect, provide, and ensure that we're taken care of was not being used. So who's being left out? And when you leave those folks out, what fills the gap? Fentanyl. Like we have to have a real conversation about the direction we're going in as a city, right? People love saying, oh, it's just Atlanta or it's the South Side, not realizing that these issues are in our community and they're being ignored, right? There's a reason why in both sides of the county, you've seen schools close in Fulton. Why? Everybody wants to blame the school board, and I understand why, but I also think that's low-hanging fruit, because nobody's asking the question of what created the environment for those schools to close. And what I'm saying is building a training center out on the river isn't enough when you're creating the environment for crime to occur. And nobody's talking about that. But what I have right now, what I'm dealing with right now, is a 7-year-old little girl that has less rights in this country than her mother had when she was born. What I'm dealing with right now is a 7-year-old asking me, Daddy, what we gonna do next? Leadership is needed. And I'm telling you, if this does not show people how failed the leadership is in our city, I don't know what to say. I don't care who gets up and runs for mayor. What I know is when you don't take care of the people, there comes somebody like Dante who says, we're not going to deal with being ignored. And there's a revolution coming. Now, the revolution don't look like it looked back in the 14 and 1300s when they were storming castles and stuff, but there's a storming that's coming to the ballot box. And what I'm saying is when you show up, when you cast your ballot, we got to think about what type of community we're building. And right now, this doesn't look good. This right here is a black mark on our county. On our county, but specifically our city. They failed. They have failed. And if we don't do something and do it quick, because this just didn't happen overnight. This didn't happen overnight. And I talked about it last time I ran. Why? Because I saw it building. It's time for the people of good conscience and good faith to step up and address the changes that need to be made. It's time for love-centered leadership, and it's time for leadership that sees, values, and is prepared to work for all people. And that's all I got to say, y'all. I appreciate y'all tapping in, but I was so hurt when I saw this article. I was so frustrated. I was so upset because a lot of times, instead of dealing with the root cause of what brought drugs into the community, they say, let's just move the drug dealers. Okay, but if you don't deal with the root cause of that issue, the drugs come back. And there's no reason in a city like Sandy Springs, we've had this much dope come in at a historic number. That's failed leadership. I'm out, y'all. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I want my daughter to know that she can grow up and that her life is going to be valuable just like everybody else that we grew up with.
We gotta work hard.